Hello and welcome. Today we are cracking the code on a really competitive exam, the UPGDC Assistant Professor exam in English Literature. So if you're ready to stop just memorizing and start thinking strategically about how to ace this thing, you are in exactly the right place.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by really understanding the challenge ahead of us. Then I'm going to introduce you to a really powerful tool called the deconstruction method. We'll put it to the test with real examples, diving into both the literary canon and critical theory. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by building your personal winning strategy.
You know, before you can win any battle, you've got to know the terrain. So let's start there. Let's break down the numbers and the massive scope of what you're actually up against in this UPGDC screening test. Okay, let's really look at this table. 120 questions in 120 minutes. That's 1 minute per question, right? But the real strategy isn't just about speed. It's about those 30 general studies questions. They can literally make or break your score. And then there's the big one, that 1/3 negative marking. That's absolutely crucial because it means every single guess has to be a calculated risk, not just a shot in the dark.
And wow, just look at the sheer scale of this syllabus. This is not a sprint, it is a full-on literary marathon. You're expected to cover centuries of history, from the Renaissance all the way to postmodernism, and hop across continents, from the British canon to global literature, and some really dense critical theory. It looks intimidating, I know, but it is not unbeatable if you have the right strategy.
So how in the world do you tackle something this big? Well, I'll tell you, it's not with memorization alone. You win by learning to think like the people who actually set the exam. And that's where our core strategy comes in. I call it the deconstruction method. This right here is the key to unlocking pretty much any multiple choice question they throw at you. It's a simple, systematic 4-step process. First, you figure out what the question is really asking. Then you look at each option like a little true or false statement. Step 3 is the game changer. You actively prove to yourself why the wrong answers are wrong. This whole process takes you from just guessing to arriving at a confident, logical answer.
Theory is one thing, but let's see how this actually works in practice. We're going to apply this method to 2 real questions from previous UPGDC papers, and we'll start by focusing on the foundational British and classical canon.
All right, here's a classic question, straight out of Aristotle's Poetics. This is testing your fundamentals. Now, before you even glance at the options, just think about the core of his argument. He talked about 6 elements of a tragedy, but which one did he call the soul? The number 1 most important principle.
And the correct answer is B, plot. Now, here's the why that matters so much. Aristotle's whole logic was that a tragedy is an imitation of an action, not just an imitation of people. You see, a character can be good or bad, but if they don't do anything, there's no story. So for him, the arrangement of the incidents, what he called the plot, or mythos, is the absolute foundation. It's the soul that everything else is built on.
And we can be 100% sure by using our elimination logic. Character? Super important, but Aristotle explicitly says it's number 2. It serves the action. Song and reasoning? Yeah, they're on the list, but they're way further down. They're more like accessories to the tragedy, not the fundamental structure, not the soul. That's the plot. Okay, let's try another one. This question tests your ability to recognize a poet's voice and their famous lines. Both of these are incredibly well known, but only one of them belongs to the great Victorian poet laureate Alfred Lord Tennyson. Which one is it?
The answer is B. That beautiful, iconic line is from Crossing the Bar, which was published way back in 1889. It's actually one of his final poems, and it's this incredibly calm, profound reflection on death. He even requested that it always be placed at the very end of any collection of his work.
And see, our deconstruction method confirms this in a heartbeat. Option A, while an amazing line, is definitively from W.B. Yeats's masterpiece, The Second Coming. And that poem captures the chaotic, anxious, fragmented spirit of modernism. It's a completely different world from the controlled, formal, elegiac tone of a Victorian like Tennyson. Spotting that period mismatch is such a powerful elimination tool.
Fantastic. Okay, let's shift gears. We're going to apply our deconstruction method to what a lot of people find to be the most challenging part of the syllabus, that abstract but absolutely crucial world of literary theory and criticism. Here is a great intertextual question. It connects the 20th century British canon all the way back to 19th century American literature. So, E.M. Forster's classic 1924 novel, A Passage to India. Where did he get that title? The correct answer is C. Forster borrowed his title directly from a poem by the great American poet Walt Whitman.
It's part of Whitman's sprawling, iconic collection, Leaves of Grass. And it makes perfect sense, because Whitman's poem was all about celebrating the connection of East and West, not just physically, but spiritually, a theme that Forster explores so critically in his novel.
And we can easily eliminate the others using context. Alexander Pope, a neoclassical satirist. He's from the completely wrong era and sensibility. And while Robert Frost and Ralph Waldo Emerson are plausible American writers, a quick mental check tells you that the direct source, both in the exact phrasing of the title and in its deeper themes, is definitely Whitman.
Now, this question requires a much deeper understanding of the dialogue, the conversation, between critics. We all know T.S. Eliot's powerful theory of tradition and the individual talent. So which of these concepts from the critic Harold Bloom stands in direct opposition to Eliot's view?
The answer is B, anxiety of influence. And I personally find this comparison fascinating, because these two theories are like polar opposites. You have Eliot, who sees tradition as this harmonious, ordered monument that new artists can just join. But then you have Bloom, who, drawing on Freud, sees it as this intense, almost Oedipal struggle, where new poets have to metaphorically kill their literary fathers to find their own voice.
And this is a perfect example of why knowing your critical schools is like a superpower. You see, the other three options, heresy of paraphrase, intentional fallacy, and affective fallacy, these are all foundational concepts of new criticism. They belong to a totally different school of thought than Harold Bloom. Just recognizing that allows you to confidently eliminate all three of them right away.
All right, so we've broken down the challenge, we've practiced the method. Now, how do we turn all of this into a real comprehensive game plan? Let's distill everything we've just covered into the key strategic principles that should guide your preparation from here on out. Here they are, your 5 guiding principles. First, and most importantly, master the why, not just the what. True understanding comes from the logic behind the answer. Second, connect the dots. Don't just study T.S. Eliot in a vacuum. Understand how his modernism is a reaction to the Romantics who came before. Third, make elimination your absolute best friend. Fourth, treat previous year's questions, PYQs, as your primary study guide. Use them to learn the exam's logic, not just to practice. And finally, I cannot stress this enough. Do not neglect general studies. And that wraps up our deep dive into the UP GDC exam. I'm going to leave you with one final, very practical question. Now that you're armed with the deconstruction method, which specific part of this vast syllabus are you going to choose to tackle and master first? Your strategic journey starts right now. Good luck.